Hi there and welcome to another weekly update. Now this week was Microsoft Ignite, Microsoft's largest IT Pro announcement sort of event and a place for great announcements. And there were indeed a number of announcements, particularly in the Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business space. And I don't necessarily intend to cover them all here and now because they've been well covered and talked about by those that were there at the time and those that have blogged about it since. I have put out a blog post. I have talked about one aspect in particular that I thought was interesting, and it concerned one of the talks that was given about Skype for Business and about Microsoft Teams, and it was around the general future direction of where Microsoft think unified communication is going, where they think they can add value and what they think the future looks like. And the general manager for Microsoft Teams and Skype, who is a lady called Laurie Wright, she said this thing. She said, "We're building beyond unified communications. We're moving to a world of intelligent communication." And I thought that was really interesting. And it's really interesting to see Microsoft redefining what they're doing in the communication space and redefining it as intelligent communication. And I think it's interesting for a number of reasons. Firstly, it differentiates Microsoft with lots of the other providers of communication software, that are getting in this space and that arguably, have very similar offerings. Microsoft are differentiating themselves and saying, we're offering intelligent communications. We're thinking about more than just instant messaging and presence and voice and video and desktop sharing. We're trying to be intelligent about communications. And this comes all the way back to the big goal with Microsoft Teams to make Teams the center of your communications world and bring the data into Teams so that you can collaborate alongside your information in the right place, and Teams being the central part of that. And I think we're going to see more of this intelligent communication coming to Microsoft products. Microsoft have invested huge amounts of money and time recently in their research departments with artificial intelligence and machine learning and a number of different technologies like that. And we're just starting to see those now come on stream and provide value at a very general level with the rest of the Microsoft ecosystem. And there's one good example of that in Teams today that was shown at Ignite. And that's this. When you have a Teams meeting, so a conference that takes place within the Teams infrastructure, that people join and present or whatever, and you choose to record that meeting. Now the recording happens in the cloud. Teams is a cloud product. You'd expect that to be the case. But the thing they demoed around these recorded Teams meetings was the actual meeting itself was, the audio was transcribed, and so when you played it back you could see in text what was being said and you could search that transcript. So that's really important and really powerful. You can imagine, if you're catching up on a meeting and you missed a meeting, or even if you're in a meeting and something was said but you want to jump to that point in time and listen to it again. I've definitely had that where I've recorded meetings and I didn't take notes because I was trying to concentrate and I was in the meeting and I knew it was being recorded, so I didn't take notes. But I wanted to go back because I thought something was said and I wanted to double check. And there's no easy way of doing that today apart from listening to the whole meeting back. Being able to search a transcript is really powerful and really interesting. And that's one example of Microsoft's cognitive services and their artificial intelligence coming to bear and being an important part of this process. So I think there's going to be really interesting things happening in the meeting space, in how we as humans meet other humans online and how we do those meetings for business. I think Microsoft are going to introduce some really interesting things that add a huge amount of value and really change how we do meetings. And I think that'll come in the next couple of years. So I think that's very interesting. And so I put out a blog post about that because I thought it was good and useful. There's a number of other announcements around Skype for Business and around Microsoft Teams that I'm just going to touch on. The big ones as a developer, the big ones are there is going to be a new version of Skype for Business on premise. That's good news, I think, for developers, especially those who are invested in UCMA and in the client SDK and those other technologies. This is good news that those platforms are going to continue going forward, and there will be a place for them in the future. I think we've seen an awful lot of new developments coming with Microsoft Teams, a lot of exciting stuff, but it maybe is not quite all ready yet. Certainly parts of it are ready and people are building applications already today. But I think there are some pieces lacking that are, I'm sure will come in time. But it's good to see that Microsoft aren't, cutting off the old on-premise Skype for Business development platforms straight away. They are going to support both. So I think it's a good time to be a developer. It's good because it's a sweet spot between new technologies showing up and emerging, and there's good challenges and opportunities there. But at the same time, the old stuff isn't being thrown away. All your old investments will continue to work, and all the things you learn will continue to be valuable. So it's a good place to be as a developer, I think, for Skype for Business and Microsoft Teams at the moment. On that note, actually, around development, I put together a video with some colleagues from Modality Systems. We put together a short video just showing really, how we use Microsoft Teams as a department, because we've had Microsoft Teams since the preview, and actually what we found is that we have embraced it entirely and wholeheartedly, because it just fits how we do work and how, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's specific to the development team or what, but it just gels naturally. It just seems to fit the way we work. So we put together a short video showing that for a particular product that we have, just showing how the internal communication works, the bits that we find useful, and how we use Teams to kind of get work done day to day. So I'll put a link in the notes to that video as well, if that's useful. Another bit of interesting news that came out of Ignite. So this is definitely in every developer's wheelhouse, I think. So Stack Overflow are using Microsoft Tech. So Stack Overflow are an interesting, an interesting project, because if I'm not mistaken, all their stuff is built on the Microsoft stack. I'm pretty sure in saying it's all .NET. And in this latest article, they have released a bot, and it's built on Bot Framework, and it uses Microsoft AI tech to help answer questions. So it's an evolution of the process that happens when you go to answer a question on Stack Overflow, and it attempts to prevent you asking a new question if your question has already been asked and answered by someone already. That's being wrapped into a chatbot. So super useful, I think. I will certainly be using it. Stack Overflow is the place to go to get your questions answered in the development world, and so this is really interesting and exciting. It's good to see Stack Overflow, using some of this new stuff. I think it benefits everybody, and they're a very good company and a good organisation, I think, for Microsoft to be supporting, because they're big and they get a lot of traffic, and I think it will be a really good thing for the cognitive services processes and the whole platform to have somebody like Stack Overflow using them day to day. I think they'll learn lots from that amount of data. And finally, the thing I'm going to leave you with is it's a tough read, I warn you. I've read it once, and I absolutely need to go and read it a second, third, and probably a fourth time. The title of the blog post is "Why Developing with WebRTC is Different Than Voice over IP Development." And I think if you asked me, I would tell you categorically that yes, of course, developing with WebRTC is different than developing with voice over IP, but I think I'll be hard pressed to tell you why. Now, this is a really nice in-depth post by I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher your name, Chai Levent Levi, and clearly knows his stuff, clearly is an authority here, and it's really good, really appreciated that he's put all this stuff down on, I'd say on page, but you know what I mean, in a blog post. It goes into lots of detail around the differences between WebRTC and Voice over IP, the things that you take for granted in one platform that you shouldn't take for granted in another, the differences between them, how they manifest themselves, how they're perceived differently, how they are actually different, and how sort of non-technical requirements play out differently. So things like encryption and privacy, identity management and authorization. So a ton of different angles really, and really useful. So I'm certainly going to try and again to wrap my head around this and try and fully understand it. But I think it's useful. Obviously, you know, the old, if you like, in quotes, the classic Skype for Business world is voice over IP based. The newer world is WebRTC. The team space is WebRTC based. So that's kind of the new world. Skype for Business is the old world. So understanding the differences between those, I think, is very useful. So that is my blog post to read in the week. To read and digest and understand, and yeah, that's the only one I want to leave you with because it's a biggie, and it'll take all your brain cycles to understand it. That's everything from me this week. So yeah, have a great week, and I will talk to you again next week.